welcome you to this special meeting of the Garner Town Council. This is a one agenda item meeting, and so we will dispense with some of our ordinary preliminary items leading into a meeting, and I'll begin by asking our clerk to call the roll. Present.
Here.
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 Here. Here.
Okay, thank you so much. Sure enough. This evening, we will begin in just a moment. I'll recognize our attorney who is going to be presenting the information for us. But for those of you who may be present, if you wish to speak and you haven't yet signed the sign-up sheet, if you will see Miss Gibson in the back corner, and you will need to be sworn, but we'll do that in just a few minutes. So, Mr. Baggett, I believe I will recognize you at this point in time to give us preliminary information and the information that we need to know as we begin the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. This meeting is to hear the request for an amendment to the conditions in SUP-18-01 submitted by Hillwood as contained in their request dated July 9. It's a quasi-judicial hearing that the mayor and the council will conduct, which means that all speakers need to be sworn before you speak. When I finish my statement here, the mayor will open the hearing and invite those who want to speak to come up and be sworn. Because it is a quasi-judicial proceeding, only fact-based evidence and testimony is relevant. Mere opinions or statements about facts or opinions about facts by non-experts are not competent to be considered by the council. Now, inevitably, information is offered that falls outside those parameters, but you are requested and instructed by the law to disregard non-factual, incompetent evidence and testimony. The amendment requested addresses changes related to traffic mitigation measures at the site. The standards for your consideration of this request are whether there are significant adverse impacts from the use at the site will be adequately mitigated or offset by the amendment, and whether traffic facilities will be able to serve the site while maintaining sufficient existing service, and whether the use with the amendment is compatible with adjacent uses in terms of traffic. Now, I'll ask the council to divulge any non-reported ex parte communications you've had with any parties before this hearing, and to indicate whether you have any preconceived notions about whether the amendment should be approved or not before the hearing, because this procedure requires you to be totally unbiased at the beginning of the hearing. So if you could report any non-reported ex parte communications, and whether you have any fixed opinion about whether the amendment should be granted.
Any council?
I disclosed to Mr. Baggett back in June. I had two conversations with Mr. Magnus and one with Ms. Barreau, not directly related to this hearing or the changes in the conditions. We avoided those topics, and nothing in the contents of those conversations will affect my opinion on this matter.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, hearing none. Thank you.
I'm done.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Baggett. Okay, I'm going to officially open this meeting, and I believe we will call on the applicant and maybe several people who are representing the applicant to come forward with a presentation. But if you will, please see Ms. Gibson and be sworn at this time. And that would be true for others of you who expect to give testimony. If you will, go ahead and let's swear everybody at the same time, please.
One's on the teams also.
Okay, yes. Can they hear us? Do we need to more specifically address them with the swearing in?
Yes, I'll ask the clerk.
Yeah, if you don't mind, please.
You might have to come up here.
Good afternoon. Chris, Jeff, Tony, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, if you guys could please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly, sincerely, truly declare and affirm that the evidence you provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gibson. And so we will hear from our first witness. And sir, if you will come to the podium there and give us your name and your address to begin with, we'd appreciate that.
Good evening. My name is Toby Coleman.
It could be something.
My address is 150 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh. Can you hear me okay? I'm not used to doing this through masks. You guys have a little bit more practice than I do so far, so just want to make sure.
It would make it a little easier for some of us to understand if you wouldn't mind. I appreciate it.
So just so that everybody, I think Fred did a good job of summarizing it. I think most of you all know this by now, but I'm just going to give a quick summary since we didn't have the typical staff report. This is a request to amend the conditions to the special use permit for the Amazon Fulfillment Center that is about to open on Jones Sausage Road. The request is to add a condition to the special use permit to permit occupancy starting on August 2nd if off-site improvements are not yet complete. The reason that the amendment is needed is that the current special use permit contains a condition requiring off-site improvements to be complete prior to occupancy of the center. As you all know, there was a prior proposal that was denied by council on the 9th of June. Hillwood and Amazon have spent the last month plus both working to get the permanent off-site improvements done, as well as talking with neighbors who raised concerns and others to try to come up with something that is materially different, and we hope is a proposal that is acceptable and we do believe meets all the standards that Mr. Baggett outlined. We can note this at the end. There were a couple of amendments that were requested by the town attorney that we are happy to add. One is that in the first paragraph of condition 4B, in the last sentence, adding some language that says that the amendment will be, make sure I get this right here. That so 4B reads, in the event the roadway improvements are not complete by Friday, July 31st, the town inspections director or his designee may permit the facility to be occupied on or after Sunday, August 2nd, if the following traffic mitigation conditions are satisfied. We would request that it be amended to say if the following traffic mitigation and all other code requirements are satisfied. And then similarly, in the last paragraph of 4B, which is after the lowercase Roman numerals, so write the paragraph right before 4C. And if any of y'all are writing down, I can stop.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Just the change, the change would be, instead of in that paragraph where it says the building inspector shall be responsible for determining in good faith, it would be the town engineer.
Right. Okay. Okay, all council members clear on that? Okay, thank you.
All right. As I said through a mask, and maybe it's a little clearer now, my name is Toby Coleman. I'm an attorney, representing Hillwood here. As I've outlined, we're seeking approval of an amendment to the special use permit for the new Amazon Fulfillment Center on Jones Sausage Road. It's as you all are probably very familiar, it's a 2.6 million square foot facility that will boast cutting edge technology. You guys have run through this a few times. I know I've been watching sort of on the sidelines, but it's been really sort of an impressive project. Among other things, it amounts to a more than $200 million investment in new real and personal property into the town. Amazon has started hiring in the last couple weeks for the facility, and the facility will create more than 1,500 new jobs with an estimated $45 million annual payroll. The Hillwood is making this request. I mean, what has happened is Hillwood came to you a month ago, actually 2 months ago, and asked you for permission to open prior to the completion of the road work. It has now spent the last month really working towards getting all the road work done. And that being said, there still may be a slight gap, and that's why we're back. And so specifically, Hillwood is requesting that Amazon be able to occupy the facility no later than Sunday, August 2nd, which is when Amazon's work week starts, even if the off-site improvements to Jones Sausage Road are not yet complete. The goal is to get those complete by then, but if they are not, due to a variety of factors, that's the request. In the event you do approve this request, the roadway improvements would have to be completed in about 2 weeks. That would be the deadline. And if they are not, there would be significant and meaningful liquidated damages of $10,000 a day. And that was a number that was, I believe, suggested by Councilman Singleton at the June 9th meeting, in the event improvements are not complete by then. And the conditions outline what complete means. This is a materially different proposal, and I want to call your attention to how it's changed over the last month from what you considered. First, Amazon moved its planned facility opening back by a month from July 5th, which is what they were trying to do when you last saw them, now to August 2nd. The deadline for completion of off-site roadway improvements has been moved up by 44 days. So last time you saw this, the deadline for completion was September 30th. Now the deadline for completion is August 17th. The time between the opening of the facility and the deadline for off-site roadway improvements, because of those changes, has been shrunk from 3 months to 2 weeks. The temporary traffic signals are installed and already operational at Calabar Street, which is the entrance to Hunter's Mark subdivision, was a major concern for a lot of the neighbors that you heard from last time. And I've already mentioned that consistent with the suggestions both from council and from other members of the public, the liquidated damages have been significantly increased. I think there's two things going on here, and I think you're going to hear about them. One is that Hillwood and Amazon heard both what this council said and what the community had concerns about, and didn't just say, okay, we're going to react to that. They actually went out and met with the community, talked with neighbors, talked with the Hunter's Mark HOA, held an open house, and tried to address those concerns. And I think what you're going to see in this hearing, both in terms of what we're going to present, as well as the fact that, as at least at this point, you don't have anybody that signed up other than folks in support of this project, I think, indicate the real significant efforts that Amazon has made to do that. The other reason that Amazon and Hillwood have been able to do this is that they've made a lot of progress in the last month. I think more progress than folks, sort of lay people like myself, would have expected. If you've driven this road in the last couple of days, you know that there's now blacktop out there. The signals are up. The permanent signals are bagged. The temporary signals on Calabar Street are ready to go. With me today are Scott Martin, and John Magnus of Hillwood. I've got Jason Bertoncino of Withers Ravenel, the project's engineer of record, as well as traffic engineer Travis Braswell of Mont McDonald, and Chris Torgler of Amazon. We'll have all of them come up and speak about various aspects of these projects. With that, I'd like to now hand the podium over to Scott, correct? The Vice President of Development for Hillwood. He's going to talk more about the proposal.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good to see you. Scott?
Good to see you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Do I need to do the address? Right. Scott
Sure,
Martin,
for the record, yeah.
Hillwood,
Thank you.
3414 Peachtree Road, Atlanta.
Hmm.
I'm just going to hit this slide real quick. One of the things that Toby had talked about was, kind of the key proposal updates. And what I want to kind of just give you guys a little bit of color on is how we were able to accelerate the schedule. How were we able to, achieve, kind of these changes. And the biggest and probably first and foremost is the utility work. I mean, we managed to get 60 days worth of work that we were being told by the utilities done in about 2 weeks. Don't ask me why I was told 60 days initially, and they actually got it done in 2 weeks, but they were able to get it done. And without their efforts there, we would have a much harder time, or we probably wouldn't be able to get back in front of you to have this discussion. Additionally, our contractor on site was able to mobilize additional crews. So now they're working basically the entire frontage of the Amazon facility on Jones Sausage Road. And again, without their diligent effort, we wouldn't be back here in front of you. We've also been extremely fortunate in terms of the weather. I know as early as last week, there were some pretty significant rain events around the Raleigh area, and they managed to miss our job site and not cause any significant delays there. So been extremely fortunate on how that's kind of played out. In terms of the conditions to amend the special use permit, we're working as hard as we can to get everything done as soon as possible. But in the event that we're not complete with the road improvements by July 31, which is the Friday before Amazon wants to occupy, the following items are what we're kind of putting out there. So, Toby's kind of touched on this a little bit. Date certain. We'll have all the required road work complete to the town and NCDOT's satisfaction by August 17th, 2020. And those items that are required for road completion, we've discussed with both Town of Garner staff and with NCDOT. Essentially, it boils down to 4 major items. The final lift of asphalt installed in all areas. The temporary striping installed along all the roadway. Essentially, the thermoplastic striping that would have to go down as a final portion, and it requires the asphalt to cure for a certain amount of days. And so the town was gracious enough, and NCDOT, to not require that as a part of the completion. Permanent traffic signals installed and operational. And then the kind of final seed and straw grassing, to be in place. So those were the 4 things that we've discussed with staff and with NCDOT, and that they've approved. During the interim between, August 2nd and August 17th, we're going to have dedicated travel lanes open and NCDOT approved turn lanes at all the Amazon entrances and Calabar. It's basically going to allow people to get off of the off the travel lanes and into the facility or into Calabar without causing any traffic delays. And Jason and Travis are going to expand on that a little bit later. But just wanted to kind of make sure that everybody's aware that the NCDOT has reviewed and approved the traffic mitigation measures that everything you're going to see tonight. Additionally, we'll have the signals installed and operational at both Calabar and the Amazon entrance 4 intersections. We've had the Calabar Street temporary signals up and running since July 2nd, and the permanent poles are in place. The permanent heads are actually already hanging and bagged and ready to go, and now we're working with the power company to get those energized and operational. In the event that the permanent signals are not operational by July 31, we already have temporary signals on site that we can place at Amazon entrance number 4 and be able to turn those on quickly if required. And then, the last kind of item I'm going to mention is that, Amazon will begin its operations on August 2nd with some staggered shifts to provide for additional space for traffic mitigation. And Chris Torgler is going to speak on that here shortly. So after that, I'll turn it over to John Magnus, and he's going to discuss kind of our communications with the local residents and then the other items of our proposal.
Let me just ask council, I think everybody's probably satisfied to let the presentation continue, and then we can do questions afterwards unless you want to question individual speakers, but I think it'll probably be more symmetrical if we just have the whole presentation done by different people. Are you satisfied with that?
Works for me.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. John Magnus, 34711 Cali Loma, Dana Point, California. Glad to be back here with you and to talk a little bit about our communication plan. So we did hear from the council loud and clear and from the residents that they weren't getting enough information about the construction, about our plan to wrap it up, and when would the turn signal light be installed on Calabar. All of those things were important. They weren't answered promptly enough, so we put a communications plan into place, and I'm here to talk a little bit more about that. The communications plan involved, it was really 5 tiers. One was to get the mailers out to all 350 residents that either abutted Jones Sausage Road or in the HOAs. The second was an email campaign, and we were able to collect significant email addresses at our open house, which I'll get to in a second. We had 4 HOA calls with Hunter's Mark with their leadership. We had a number of one-on-one meetings with some subject matter experts on the transportation for the neighborhood and the neighborhoods around there. We coordinated our communication plan with Hunter's Mark's Facebook page, so they were able to place some of that same information there for them to see. And then we didn't want to stop there. We put together the weekly email updates, and hopefully the council and staff are receiving those. Those will continue until the project is complete. And so those will continue with both picture and updates on what's coming next. And I think that's been helpful. Now to go to our biggest effort, which was the open house, we contacted again the 350 neighbors and HOAs, the 2 HOAs that abut the property, and using social distance and some protective equipment that was out there, we brought about 80 people together over a 2-hour period. First, we were going to have more of a kind of town hall meeting, and then it turned into questions and answers, and it was refreshing because the people there did not have enough information. and we were able to answer those until every question was answered. Even some that we couldn't answer, the next week we came back to city staff and brought them at least 4 questions that we could not answer, was not within the scope of our project, and some that have been, quite frankly, already taken care of by our contractor or staff. So we really like the feedback that was coming back and forth. On the email campaign, once we sent out the updates, we were getting questions, and we set up an email account for JSR questions that was a dummy account within Hillwood, and those questions kept coming in, and sometimes 3 and 4 times till it was clarified. And the number one question was always, when is the signal going to be operational on Calabar? And once that signal went operational on July 2nd, the questions tended to die down to a dull roar until some of the concerns about speed on Jones Sausage Road, breaks in traffic, and an ability to make that left turn into the neighborhood or right turn out, all were taken care of by the temporary signal. So how did we accomplish that? It was really through getting the signals programmed and put in place and permitted through DOT, and then communicating when they would be installed. We then sent out another email to when they would be flashing, and then another email when the signals went out live. So that campaign, produced a number of communications and relationships with Adrian, Larry, Ralph, Angelisa, Leona, Emily. All these were people who live in that area that really just wanted some additional information, and it was a lot easier than we thought. And people were very friendly. There was nobody mad. People just wanted the right information at the right time. So in terms of communication, we're also here to talk to the council and hopefully communicate our intent to put our money where our mouth is, and that is we have increased the liquidated damages tenfold, from $1,000 a day to $10,000 a day if we don't make it by August 17th. I think we're going to make it. It was through some relationships that we had with the utility companies that were able to pull in their additional resources to speed up a 6-week time frame to 2 weeks. And once the utilities were out of the way, you can see the progress that was able to be attained. Secondly, we recognize that on March of 2019, the city graciously agreed to fund some of the improvements on Jones Sausage Road, up to $600,000 to the developer. And recognizing that with COVID and with additional expenses of the city, we think this is a good time to waive that ability to be reimbursed, and up to $600,000. So we will not be seeking reimbursement at this time or ever on that. So we hope that goes a long way to, one, help the city, but 2, to show you that we're in earnest. We're looking for your support and trust. I'll be followed by our civil engineer of record, Jason with Withers Rivenall, to answer any questions on the construction. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
So my name is Jason Bertoncino, 2293 Toad Hollow Trail, Apex, North Carolina. To the extent that my testimony bleeds over into engineering, I am a graduate from Virginia Tech with a degree in civil engineering. I have been working in the field of engineering and construction since 1994, and I have been a registered professional engineer in the state of North Carolina for over 20 years. So now the pleasantries are out of the way. Since the last board meeting, as everyone has said, AT&T and the other dry utilities have completed their work. Most of the primary road grading and the underground construction, such as storm drainage, has been completed and should be wrapping up very soon. Asphalt is now covering approximately 2/3 of the project, with more going down daily. This is significant not just from the standpoint of how much construction is complete, But once even the base layer of asphalt gets down on the job, it really protects us from weather delays. So we've talked about, we've been fortunate with the weather. We're also reaching a point where we're protecting ourselves from future weather concerns. So it's very important as we talk about schedule moving forward. I know at the last meeting there were some questions about permits and whether everything had been obtained or not. So again, this is just sort of an update from that. All of the permits that have been obtained for the project, with the most recent ones there at the bottom being for the temporary mitigation plan and the temporary signal on the site. There's also some questions about how this is being scheduled and whether this fit into a DOT schedule. This project is merely being observed with some funding from NCDOT. They're not driving the schedule or the contract or anything like that. That's simply the contractor and Hillwood. That's why they've been able to accelerate the schedule. So far as the project itself, from the original approval back in 2018, the project is required to construct 2 lanes in each direction, north and south, along Jones Sausage Road, in addition to turn lanes at each of the entrances and primary roadways across the entire frontage of the site, which is about 3/4 of a mile in length. In addition to a right turn lane being installed at the intersection of Jones Sausage Road and East Garner Road. We went into talking about mitigation plans. The goal was to try to mimic as much of those final arrangements as we could do while still allowing construction to be completed. With that, we generated the traffic mitigation plans. Travis Braswell with Mott McDonald will talk a little bit about the math behind that a little bit. Those plans, as I said in the last slide, have been reviewed and approved by NCDOT for safety and traffic continuity. Again, those mitigation measures were approved by NCDOT on June 24th. So far as the mitigation measures themselves, they are in your packet, but I will list what is being required and what must be in place prior to this August 2nd date that we're discussing. A 100-foot left turn lane northbound from Jones Sausage Road onto Calabar, a 450, and these lengths are storage lengths on the roadway itself. 450-foot left turn lane southbound Jones Sausage Road into facility entrance 2. A 250-foot left turn lane southbound from Jones Sausage Road to facility entrance 4. A 200 left turn lane southbound from Jones Sausage Road into facility entrance 6. Again, Travis Braswell is going to talk about the math behind this a little bit with Amazon's change in schedule as well as the progress on the site. Those lengths actually exceed what the modeling suggests they needed to be. But again, we're a little bit deeper into the process than we were last time we were before you. We're sticking with the old mitigation plan. Temporary signals at both Calabar and site entrance should be installed if the permanent ones are not ready. Also, the facility itself will route all truck traffic as it exits the site to the northernmost entrance closest to I-40 to stay out of the construction zone as much as possible. The first of these measures, the temporary signal at Calabar, was installed on July 2nd. With that, I will turn it over to Travis Braswell with Mott McDonald to again discuss the math behind these mitigation measures.
Thanks, sir. Welcome.
As Jason said, my name's Travis Braswell, 6517 Blaylock Forest Drive, Willow Spring, North Carolina. I'm a graduate of North Carolina State University, 2004, with a degree in civil engineering. Following graduation, went to work for NCDOT for almost 8 years, then started with Mott McDonald and have been there for just over 8 years. So just over 16 years experience in engineering. I got my professional engineering license in 2008 and professional traffic operations engineering certification in 2014. So my firm, Mott McDonald, as Jason said, we developed the traffic impact analysis back in May of 2018 for the Amazon facility and have been involved in various aspects since then. Most recently, this past May, we're approached with the proposed mitigations that Jason described, Scott described. We helped determine the storage links for that proposed mitigation. As Jason said, NCDOT has reviewed and approved those mitigations. Most recently, with updated information, projected traffic volume estimates for the first 2 weeks in August, that Amazon provided to us. And we reevaluated that proposed mitigation, found that it's more than sufficient to accommodate the estimated traffic that is projected for those first couple weeks in August. As a matter of fact, at Calabar, the southbound left turn at Calabar into the site, and the southbound left turn into site driveway number 4, with these latest traffic volume projections, the mitigation exceeds what would be required based on those information. Both of the letters that we provided with this evaluation are in your packet, but I'm happy to explain more later after we do the presentation. I believe Chris with Amazon is going to follow me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Town Council. It's nice to have that off.
Good to see you.
My name is Chris Sorgel. I'm the general manager of the site that'll be opening here in Garner. So I've been with Amazon for about 5 years. I live at 7844 Percussion Drive in Apex, North Carolina. I'm really excited to get started. So I'm not a traffic engineer or a construction expert. I lead the large teams at Amazon that take a bunch of little things and put them in brown boxes and ship them out across the country. So for me, I'm very excited. I've seen a ton of growth over the past 5 years since I've been with Amazon, and I'm really excited to bring that to Garner and hopefully welcome you all for a tour once we're through with all the challenges of COVID this year. So I will talk a little bit about what we're doing with shift staggering. I think last time it was, how it was presented was a little bit confusing. So what we did here, and I'll direct your attention to the screen, is look at the full 2 weeks that's being requested. So from August 2nd to August 15th. And every hour at 15-minute increments where we'll have traffic in or out of the building, combined head count, combined traffic coming in and out. So what you see, 5:15 beginning August 2nd and spanning all the way out to almost 8 p.m. every single day. So really the biggest time we'll have, the peak is going to be what we would expect in the morning and the evening, and maxing just over 140 vehicles during these 2 weeks. So the important thing is to understand how this is different, like what we've done. So typically what you would see is 2 large clusters of folks coming in and out of our building, both in the morning and the evening. And that would be the inbound side of the building, so a large group of people that work on our inbound operation, and the outbound side, the ones that are packing and shipping things out. So what you see is 2 shifts basically in the morning time, and also 2 shifts on night shift. And what we've done is taken those 2 and split them into 6 shifts, both in the AM and also for the night shift. So where we typically have only 4 in our building, we're going to have 12. And this is different. This is completely different than what you'll see in the other launches this year, different than what you've seen in previous years. And it's because we have some creative folks who really thought, how can we on the operations side, in partnership with what Hillwood is doing with the road construction, provide some solutions. So like I said, we're very excited to get started. I think this will have a pretty significant impact, just being in the buildings for the past 5 years and seeing how people come and go and the traffic patterns. But happy to answer any questions as it relates to operations at Amazon as well. Thank you. I'll hand it back off to Toby.
I want to thank you all. Just to sort of, I want to thank you guys, number one, for holding this special meeting. We do know that y'all are very busy, especially in this time, so we really appreciate y'all considering this. To go over this again, I'll just mention a couple of things. Number one, typically I would have handed this out during my presentation, but there is a white binder in front of you. It has, most of this is background documents, things like the original special use permit, things like tab 1 is our permit application for amendment, that sort of thing. In particular, from what you've just heard, tabs 6 and 7 contain the NCDOT approvals of both the temporary signalization plan and the traffic mitigation measures. DOT approved the proposed traffic mitigation measures that are before you on June 24th, as Jason mentioned. Tab 8 is Mr. Braswell's most recent report. He's also got his prior report attached to it. A couple things I will note are, with the shift staggering, if you take the peak hour for what Amazon expects the traffic to be with shift staggering, it's about 420 cars is the peak hour in those 2 weeks for AM and PM. That is about 37% of what the expected peak AM traffic is going to be at full occupancy, and 18% of what the peak traffic is expected, peak PM traffic is expected to be at full occupancy. So just to give you another sense of the potential impact that shift staggering is having, in addition to all these other mitigation measures, by spreading out when people both come in and when they leave, they're reducing the amount of traffic that's on the road at the same time. And that's the goal there. And then just tab 9 and tab 10, again, for your reference, tab 9 is a summary of the March 23rd open house with some questions. And tab 10, you've probably seen it, is the most recent traffic update with neighbors. I think, again, one of the I think, great parts of our story is that communication has worked. I think there was a lot of communication that's happened over the last month, and we've gotten some positive feedback from neighbors, as Mr. Magnus has discussed. With that, I will stop talking your ear off. If you guys have questions, we are available.
Okay, thank you very much, and we will start
One other thing, just to make sure, I would like to enter all of this into as evidence into the record, and both our PowerPoint as well as all the documents that we've submitted. In addition, I would like to have Mr. Bertoncino and Mr. Braswell entered as experts.
Okay, I think without any opposition, that could be granted. That's right, Mr. Baggett?
Yes, it's all recorded. I consider it all part of the record.
And to the extent there is any opposition or anything like that, we would like the chance to respond and present a closing.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, we will proceed with a round of questionings, and council members, if you want to direct your question to a particular person who's made a presentation, if you will note who that person is, and we'll ask you to come to the podium to answer, if you will. Thank you very much for the thorough presentation, and for the aids to the presentation. It's all on the record, sure enough. So I will start to my right and see if Ms. Behringer has questions for specific persons or questions in general that you would like to ask at this time.
I do have a couple of questions, and I'm sorry I don't remember individual names or who it belongs to, so whoever it's appropriate to, if you'd answer for me. If we issue the temporary certificate of occupancy tomorrow, at what point after that would traffic noticeably increase in and out of Amazon? Would it be 3 days, 5 days, 10 days?
Magnus.
Yes, ma'am. No, our promise to the city and our mitigation measure is not to start that noticeable increase until August 2nd. In fact, since the building is now finalized, and we have the certificate of compliance that the city inspectors have now granted, Amazon could choose to stock that building on the 26th of July, and they've decided to help us out to push that also to August 2nd. So August 2nd will be when you will see the noticeable increase.
Okay, all right, thank you. And my second question, just a statement first and then a question. We've appreciate the communication and the outreach to the community. I'm a little puzzled as to why the outreach didn't occur earlier. Was it just missed, or what was the answer to that?
I'd say that's a miss on our part. When we first presented the project, touted the jobs, there was a lot of support for it, and we didn't sense there was any community opposition, but as long as that road's not done and it impacts the people who turn on and off that, I think the noise got louder and louder, noise in a good way, and that feedback started coming until it was at a point where it needed to be addressed. But we should have reached out to at a minimum to the HOAs earlier, because they are adjacent to the project, and so it was a good lesson learned for us.
Okay, that's all, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I'll continue to my right. Mr. Dellinger?
Comment and then a very kind of specific question. First, I want to commend you on all the hard work you've done over the past several months, not just on the road, but in the community as well. My question relates pretty specifically to the light at Calabar, and my reading of the request is that the signal will be put up, but my understanding, and again, it could be wrong, but based on the Department of Transportation approval, the temporary light is still only for 30 days. So my question is, at the end of that 30 days, will the permanent light be ready? And if not, what kind of, is there an extension that can be done for this? Or is there some type of, because the way I'm reading the SCP amendment, it talks about it going up, but it doesn't mention specifically continuous operation of signalization at Calabar.
Yeah, so there's actually three possible remedies to that. One being you suggested an extension of the temporary signal. Secondly, being the permanent signal in place. Again, they're up, heads are up, you're trying to get power to them, get operational. And then third, there's actually a other temporary signal plan, if you will, that's pole mount, that's on the final poles. That could also be implemented and put in place. That's not a fully functional final signal, but is still the overhead, would seem that way as well. So all three of those are viable options. Again, the intent is to have the permanent signal in place.
Yeah, it's still, there's a little, and you can speak to, there's still a little concern that there's not mention of, I mean, I would be fine for an affordance of a period of time in between, obviously, the expiration of the temporary signalization and the installation of the permanent signalization. But what I would hate is for the temporary to run out and then for 2 or 3 weeks, or, you know, there's delays and they have trouble again getting in and out of the neighborhood.
You know, as far as what's in the actual condition, one way we can address that, I mean, as Jason said, I think there's a number of ways to address the concern practically. I think the most likely being that it's going to be permanent pretty quickly. But as far as the condition and what you can use as your hammer, what we could do is revise both B subsection 2 and 3 to say that in the second sentence, the temporary signal shall remain in place and operational until the permanent signal is installed and operational. I think that addresses your concern.
Yeah, I just didn't want too large of a gap for whatever reason for there to be between when the temporary light's there and the permanent one goes in. So,
yeah, and we'd be happy to I presume we'd be happy to make that as a proposed amendment to this.
So just as a quick follow-up, to put it, I guess, in layman's language, do I understand correctly? Yeah, once temporary lights are installed, there will not be a period of time going forward until the everything is finally completed. There will not be a period of time where there will not be any signal lights there. Is that right?
That is correct.
It's like once you get accustomed to the lights, we want them kept there in some fashion.
We're not going to snatch it away.
All right. Thank you.
that's the only question I have.
Thank you, Mr. Tellinger. Okay, Mr. Vance?
Good brief. I have no questions.
Okay. I'll go to my left and go to Mr. Singleton.
Yes, the fourth condition, just want confirmation on a couple items. Item number E1 talks about the final lift of asphalt, all roadway improvements expanding Jones Sausage Road along the frontage of the facility, and adding the right turn lane from Jones Sausage to Garner Road. That is part of the improvements, of the permanent improvements noted to be done by Monday, August 17, 2020. Correct. So when I see a lot of head shaking, so I think I got my answer my question. Okay.
To the extent you'd like it on the record, that is correct.
Okay. Also, I think Mr. Martin touched on this. You talked about this, the condition that says the temporary striping of the lanes, and they have to be temporary because the asphalt has to cure for a time. What's the estimated time on that cure time before the thermoplastic striping goes down, or the permanent striping? I'll rephrase that.
We're being told by the contractor 15 to 30 days.
Okay. All right, and to touch on the communication issue, I appreciate y'all finally meeting with the neighbors. 2 or 3 months too late. I asked staff several times over the weeks before we had these meetings, has somebody told them they ought to meet with the neighborhood? Has somebody asked them if they're gonna meet with the neighborhood? And different staff members said, yes, we suggested it and you didn't do it. So, you know, after we said no twice, I reckon I got your attention and you heard from the neighbors and you met with them. I was, finally worked, but if you had done this 3 months ago, we probably wouldn't be here tonight. But anyway, the communication could have happened a whole lot earlier, and I appreciate y'all doing it, but it should have been done a whole lot earlier. I mean, they're right across the street, and the disrespect shown to the neighbors was not appreciated by them. Most of them might be on board now, but a lot of them still, you really ticked a lot of them off. And they're glad to see this happen. They're glad to see that stoplight there, but you rubbed a lot of them the wrong way. That's all for now.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Matthews?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The primary question I had, Mr. Dillinger asked it already in reference to make sure we got the stoplights operational 24/7, even through that transition. I thought the presentation, I agree with Mr. Vance, was a great presentation. Glad to see all the due diligence with the neighbors and keeping that communication going there and that feedback. I think if anything come for this, we've all walked away learning some things. Maybe we could do things a little bit different. Being in the business world, I've made my share of the mistakes and things I could have done better. But I think going forward with your future projects, it'll be handled a little different, a lot smoother, and not have to go through all of this. And I certainly appreciate all the neighborhood getting together with you folks, giving that feedback. It's most important, and because that puts you with skin in the game. And every other day I've driven out there, even gone into the subdivision, see how long it took me to come back out of that light, and everything was quite fast. So I was very pleased with that. So I think we've got a good presentation here. I think we can work with, and looking forward to getting this thing moving forward and getting people employed and making a success out of it and cutting that ribbon one day. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. So we'll see if there's another round, and we'll start with the same sequence. Ms. Behringer, did you have any other questions come to mind? Nope. Mr. Dellinger?
I guess a quick question for the attorney and our attorney. In the document, the roadway improvements are consistently referred to as roadway improvements, as understood as their attachment to the original SUP. Yeah, so it may not be substantive, but under section 4, under F, where it's talking about liquidated damages, it refers to, I think, instead of roadway improvements, to permanent improvements. Is that just a typographical? I'm not sure if that's, there's no reference to a permanent improvement in the rest of the document. So was it meant to be, I know I don't want to assume it references the roadway improvements. I assume it does. It's the same reference, right?
So if you look at 4E, we make permanent improvements a defined term in the third line of 4E.
What page is that?
It's page 5.
The pages are out of order, so that helps. Okay. Thank you. That answers my question.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, while the attorney is still there, and your name says Mr. Caldwell?
Toby Coleman is my name.
I'm sorry, sir?
I'm sorry. Were you asking me what my name was?
Yes,
or were
sir.
you asking? Toby Coleman is my name.
Coleman, okay, I want to make sure I had it written down correctly here, no problem. There were 2 conditions that you spoke of, and one for 4B, the following traffic mitigations and code requirements would be added to, that was on page number 4, the code requirements be added in. And there was one last one that you mentioned, in reference to the engineer, town
Yeah.
engineer.
That's also in 4B. That's in the last paragraph of 4B. It's where it says the building inspector.
Yes.
Cross out building inspector and put in town engineer.
Okay, good. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, sir. Okay, back to this side, Mr. Singleton.
Yes, item 4E, item number 4, talks about the seeding and erosion control. Obviously, planting grass is not ideal in July and August anywhere, but it does say it's not necessary for grass to actually grow to established completion. Due to the time of the year, are there any landscape improvements that have been allowed to be delayed until the fall when it might be more appropriate to plant them? Or most landscape improvements been made? And with this, since it's not actually necessary for grass to grow to establish completion, does that mean grass will be planted later, or when it's completed, and if grass grows, it grows?
I will, Scott, do you want me? Our understanding, so my reading of this and my understanding is, and I know we've talked with staff about this, is grass will be seeded. The concern, our concern is, I think, what you just said, which is it's really hard in mid-August to get grass to start growing. And so what we're concerned about is that, if there's no grass and that's the one thing that triggers $10,000 a day liquidated damages, that's a pretty challenging item.
Well, I mean, it's not ideal time to plant grass. We all agree upon that. Mr.
And we may
Dixon?
get staff to elaborate on that. Typically on any plantings, grass or trees or shrubs or whatever, there's a type of warranty period. And typically, staff will go out after that warranty period and make sure everything's approved and living, and if not, they have to replace certain items. So that's typical on any job. So. But
that's right. We pretty much require it to be seeded, drawed, and mulched. It's a requirement by the Department of Natural Resources to make sure that that's taken care of. But grass establishment is not a requirement. And if it's still having problems fall, then they would have to come back and add some more grass seed in a better time of year.
Is another way to think about that is we want the rains to hold off while all this other work is done, and then once you get seeded out there, you'd love to see a lot of rain. Okay. Don't know if nature will handle it that way, but.
And it still will have a hard time growing if it's 95 degrees, but if it's fescue, then might as well be throwing it on the floor in here. And have a good chance to grow in here as well out there. All right, that's the only question I had
I
there.
believe I'm back to Mr. Matthews.
I'm good to go, sir.
Anything else? Okay. All right, if council is satisfied with questions at this point, I will move to recognizing other speakers who are either part of this presentation or have come to speak to the issue at hand. Ms. Gibson, do you have some names there who have not yet testified? Or I would just ask in general, is there anyone here who came to speak that I'll be happy to recognize you at this point in time? No other names on your list that you're aware of? Okay. And I meant to ask, we didn't, okay, come on up, ma'am, if you will, please. We didn't have any persons that are in the overflow area that need to be brought down, is that correct? Okay, all right.
Yes, you need to be sworn. Yes,
Yeah, if you
ma'am.
haven't been
Yes.
sworn, please step back to the clerk's desk there. Ma'am, have you already been sworn? Okay, please go back to and be sworn at this time. Okay, if you'll come to the podium and please state your name and address, that would be very helpful.
Okay, Katrina Kilpatrick, 5400 Jones Sausage Road.
You say Katrina?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go right ahead.
Just a couple of questions. I just wanted to know, how do I get on the communications email? I think I got the notice maybe a couple days after the date that it occurred. First question. Second question, if there's an issue that arises on our property due to the construction, who would we reach out to?
Okay, who's best suited to answer? We'll go with the first question. She wants to get on the information email. I think if you just provide your email address, Scott, would that be to you or somebody? Can you answer that?
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so that will handle that. And any concern she has about issues on her property relating to the construction, is that right?
Yes, sir. Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's
All right. Got your question answered?
Yes,
Okay, good.
thank
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Yep. Name and address, please.
I keep my mask on, that's okay.
Sure.
Barbara Mitchell, 302 Farmhouse Road, Accokeek, Maryland, resident at 4417 Wilmington Road. I have a statement and then a question. So on Jones Sausage Road, the traffic is usually so jam-packed that you can't get out along Wilmington Road right in front of Jones, right in front of Amazon. So it's between the two traffic lights that are going up. So what I want to know is how does that affect Wilmington Road? How do we get out? When it's really traffic, we're rushing trying to get in, but now with the new traffic flow that's going to be happening, and are we going to have a turning lane? The statement I also want to make is that I did get the information late, the first meeting, and so I'm in Maryland, so that's why I'm here at this one and not the other one. So I do thank you for the opportunity, though, for allowing us to have this meeting and getting the information to me earlier than before.
Okay. So who wants to take an opportunity to try to answer the issue as it relates to the Wilmington Road area?
Wilmington Road will need, again, the town's thoroughfare plan that's been approved and adopted also by Campo and NCDOT calls for it to be a median divided roadway. You have facilities of this nature, you can only space traffic signals at certain intervals. We have them as close as we possibly can, both to the interstate and then the next possible site. So the driveways at the subject site are not so coincidentally at those things. We literally spaced them as close as we possibly could to provide as much access, but Wilmington Road falls in between two of those signals, and they will have to turn right onto Jones Sausage Road, either continue south to Jones Sausage or make a U-turn at the next traffic signal, which is coincidental Sun Axis 4. Maybe some other development plans in the near future in there that may also tie to Wilmington Road that may provide a more direct access to one of those signals.
Okay, thanks, sir. Okay.
So there's a medium that's going to be between the two. So we would have to go down this way and around. I didn't know that, but okay. But we would turn at the turning lane and come back.
We can kind of step
Okay,
aside.
no, that's good. Okay, I didn't know that, so but thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next speaker. Name and address, please.
Savannah Lipinski, 4424 Wilmington Road. So I did know about the median and the traffic signals, and I'm assuming that we are going to be allowed to make U-turns at both of those traffic signals.
Yes, ma'am.
Coming and going. Okay. And as far as the temporary traffic situation goes, how long before that median goes into place? Okay. Okay. That's all I needed to know. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I assume when you make those U-turns, you should make them carefully. Okay, does that cover all the persons who wish to speak or had a question for any persons who have testified? Okay. Okay, come back to the podium, please.
In regard to the light, the traffic light, since we have to do a U-turn, will the light have like a turning signal?
Yes, ma'am.
And so it'll allow us
An
to.
arrow, the left turns at both signals.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, seeing no other persons, and Ms. Gibson, you don't have any other names of any persons at this point, is that right? So you're clear. Thank you. Okay, council, any other questions generated as a result of any of these presentations, or any questions you didn't think of before? Hearing none, okay. Mr. Baggett, are there any things I'm missing, or are we ready to close the public hearing and ask for a motion?
I think we're fine. I want to confirm with Hillwood that all the oral changes to the requested amendment are agreed to, including the one that I didn't suggest, to add "and operational" after the word "place," where that word appears in double I and triple I under B.
That is correct.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay. Council, you should have at your desk proposed wording for amendments. And so I'm going to close the public hearing, and I believe we've covered all the necessary items to now move to a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Matthews. Go right ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the request for amendment to conditions SUP-18-01 be approved, and that the town council makes the following findings fact based on the evidence and testimony submitted by the applicant and others. The amendment does, number one, accomplish effective mitigation for expected new levels of traffic in the immediate area of the site. Number two, create adequate and safe traffic facilities to serve the site while maintaining sufficient facilities for existing service. And three, constitute acceptable compatibility with adjacent uses in terms of traffic.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Matthews. Motion made, and let's see, was that Mr. Vance who seconded? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Just before we vote, any other questions or comments from council? Okay, we have a motion properly before us and properly seconded. So all those who are in favor of the motion, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Those who are opposed to the motion, please vote by saying no. Okay. Motion passes, I believe, unanimously. So it's almost anticlimactic, I guess. Yeah. We'll hear any other comments from council at this point.
Yes, regarding the communication and the dropped ball there, you just put that under lessons learned. We are in the communication age, and we can't communicate too much. So make sure that going forward, we take that under advisement and are clear with all concerned what they need to know.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah,
I'd just like to say officially welcome to the Garner family and the neighborhood over there. And we are one big family here in Garner, and look forward to what Amazon's going to provide in jobs and being a part of our community. And hope this is the start by working with Amazon, that other industries will look around and hopefully talk to you guys and say, is Garner a good place to come to? And they'll get a good report from you. And like I said, as Ms. Barringer mentioned, we talked about earlier, I think a lot of people walked away with some lessons learned, and we all will do a better job of it next time. So welcome to the community, and I guess I'll get a lot of smiley boxes about Christmas time then.
Probably so, yeah. Yeah, anybody else?
Real quick,
Okay, go
just
right
to
ahead.
reiterate what my colleagues have said, I think Mr. Magnus's speech right there in the middle is kind of a lesson for developers coming into a community. Don't be afraid of your new neighbors. Engage them early, engage them often. They're reasonable, but they want to be informed. I think that is the larger lesson. The town can do a better job on our side too. It's a group effort. Yeah, welcome to Garner.
Okay, thank you, sir. As a mayor, I promise I won't make any long speeches, but I do feel compelled to observe that this site that Amazon has now built a beautiful building on was vacant for quite a number of years. And Mr. Vance and I had the opportunity to serve on a corporation that was put together as a result of the tragedy that occurred on the site many years ago, the Garner Economic Development Corporation. And that organization, along with others, met for a number of years to market the site and to have a dream of it one day becoming again a productive site that would employ people here in our town and even in surrounding areas. And of course, we also like the fact that it replaces some of the missing tax base that we had before. So this is going to be a big boon for our town. And it's a pleasure to, what's the old saying? It's really nice when the plan comes together, I guess, or it's nice to see a plan come together. So, okay, is that it, Ms. Barringer? Thank you. So I want to thank all of you Hillwood folks and Amazon folks. I know, Mr. Mangus, you've flown in from California at least once or twice. Maybe other people have come from long distances, but it's been a process, and hopefully we've all benefited from the interaction. As my colleagues on the council have said, the town of Garner, I think, is a welcoming place, even though maybe the contentious nature of these hearings didn't always seem that way. But we are excited about your being here, and hopefully in the days to come we'll have other interactions, and perhaps I don't know if Amazon likes to do ribbon cuttings or not, but at any rate, something analogous to that would be suitable, we think, at a future date whenever you're ready for that. So, again, thank you all for the good work you've put in on this. Thank you, staff, for all of you who've been involved, and thank you, council, for your indulgence coming out, meeting specially. So, with that, unless there's any other item that needs to come before the council, I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And it is unanimous. I declare this meeting adjourned.